and it's leaving the dedicated investors kind of holding the bag.
Hello and welcome to this very special show on Bloomberg Quint. After months of confusion following allegations of impropriety against ICICI Bank leader Chanda Kochhar, the bank's board has taken action. Ms. Kochhar is now on voluntary leave pending the outcome of an internal inquiry constituted by the bank. An ICICI Group veteran, Sandeep Bakshi, has been spirited back from the group's life insurance business to lead the bank as chief operating officer in her absence. This is a cleanup, no doubt. But is this enough of a cleanup? That's what my colleague Ira Dugal and I are debating today on Bloomberg Quint with IIAS founder Anil Singhvi. Mr. Singhvi, thank you very much for joining us here on Bloomberg Quint. And the question I have to you, Ira, because you've been tracking banking for a very, very long time, especially this, and to you, Mr. Singhvi, is this a cleanup that's sufficient? It may have come a little late, or is this too little, too late? Mr. Singhvi.
I think it's too little and too late, and I'm not particularly very happy with the way this whole thing has been panned out in the last 60 odd days, and would like to comment on every aspect of the board's communication to all the stakeholders.
Okay.
And I don't look at just the investors alone, because it's not a company, and I would always look at bank very, very differently than the company, because when he's looking at deposit holders, when you're looking at the stakeholders, which are like investors, and more importantly, even the borrowers.
Yeah, of course.
Because they have large stake with the bank, be it a company which is doing well or be it a company which is not doing well. And it looks at the bank and the robust system and processes followed by the bank on this.
No, so that point well taken. Specifically, which were the points that disappointed you in terms of the board not being able to have done the right job by all these stakeholders?
Let me bring you back and take the clock back by about 45 to 60 days odd, right? The first communication on this subject, on which the controversy of the bank is, of 28th March. And I'll read out from the press release of the bank. ICICI Bank Board reviews the bank's internal processes for the credit approvals and finds them robust. Robust. You can open the dictionary and see the meaning of robust. The board also expresses and reposes full faith and confidence in its MD and CEO, Ms. Chanda Kochhar. This is 28th March 2018.
Right.
And now flip over on 30th May 2018. And the bank's own press release again says, and I quote, the board of directors in its meeting held on 29th May, that's just 2 months from 28th March, decided to institute an inquiry to be headed by an independent and credible person to examine and inquire into an anonymous whistleblower complaint. 28th March, they were referring to the complaint made by Mr. Gupta. The name was given. And they said that we have looked into every process of the bank and we find them very robust. What transpired in 60 days for this board to then decide to have a full-fledged inquiry to be done by an independent and credible person?
Okay, I think that is one thing we will get into whether they...
There's the thing, Ira.
No,
there's not
but
one
sir,
thing.
Okay, my question is this first. Okay, there are two parts to it. There is the conduct of the managing director, CEO, she still is, that's Chanda Kochhar, and the conduct of the board. The way I look at it, and both of you can jump in here, this is necessary. This was necessary that Chanda step aside and an internal inquiry be done, headed by an independent person.
Why was it not done then on 28th of March?
Yes, I'll get to that. But at least can we agree that the necessary has done, and then we'll get to the second part as to whether sufficient has been done. The necessary condition was that the current MD and CEO go away for the time being and an independent inquiry be set up.
I'm giving you this.
I don't disagree with that at all.
When I'm saying that it is too late. This was in 2016. What is this board doing since 2016? And then what happens from 2016 to 2018? And come back and say that March 2018, that everything is good in our bank. Our credit processes are the most robust. I repeat the same word again. And then again come back and then May of 2018.
I don't want to, but can I play devil's advocate here? Because we don't have anybody from the board or the bank here, and I'll try and do that. You pointed out in March that they said that we've reviewed our credit processes, they're robust. Yes. What they're saying in May is not contrary to what they said in March. In May, they said, look, we've got another whistleblower complaint, right? And they've gone on to say, in keeping with the whistleblower policy of the bank, the board has mandated its audit committee to take all further actions. Now, as you know, most whistleblower policies require that you set up an internal committee or an internal inquiry of of some sort to look into the whistleblower complaint to see how serious it is and whether there's any truth to it or not, which is what they're doing this time. They're not suggesting that their credit processes are not robust or any less robust than they were in March.
Are you suggesting that 2016 was not a whistleblower and it was just an ordinary complaint?
Mr. Singhvi, please don't get me wrong. I'm not defending the bank. I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm only making 2 points here. What they're saying in March is not contrary to what they're saying in May. That's one. Secondly, I don't know what's in the second whistleblower complaint. They've never made that public. They've never made that public. I don't know if it pertains to Videocon Group. I don't know if it pertains to SR Group, which subsequently was written about by the Indian Express. I don't know if it pertains to a third or fourth or fifth group or all of these and more. I don't know what the seriousness of that whistleblower complaint is.
But I
would suggest that if the bank is saying it's good enough.
Menika,
so there was the devil's advocate.
But I'm finding it very, very difficult to digest this because of 28th March, they've narrated everything about Videocon and New Power and all other related party transactions or conflicted situations. But on 30th May of this anonymous letter or whistleblower's letter, where they felt that there is a need to have an independent, credible person to look at comprehensively and ask the CEO to be on leave, they do not even give what the complaint is all about. So this is according to me is bizarre. This is bizarre. That the thing which is you put down on a piece of paper very clearly and elaborate 2012 April 3,250 crore, all of that. But on 30th May, when you want to have a comprehensive study done or an investigation done, you don't even narrate it what it is. For a minute, I presume it's the same thing. Because if the board has failed to give us information, I will take that this information, what was provided on 29 March, is similar to that.
But that's an assumption.
But the underlying issues are the same. They say they're code of conduct related issues. They say that in the May.
They do. They say code of conduct.
So the underlying, even if the case and the facts are different, but the underlying issue remains the same as to Chanda's conduct.
They also mention alleged quid pro quo.
Yeah. So the issues are the same.
So more or less
principal matters are the same.
Yeah.
The cases may vary.
And concerning again the robust processes followed at the credit committee, concerning even the conduct of the CEO and the MD. Okay. So without getting into the numbers or who the client is and all that, which is immaterial on that. Now I'll come back again on 28th of March, where and again I read from the press release, the larger exposures are approved by the credit committee of the board. The majority of the credit committee members are independent directors of the board. Majority. The word is majority. But when you look at the composition of the credit committee, right from 2012, and I'm referring to 2012 because the press release talks about April 2012 when this whole problem started on that. The board, the credit committee never comprised until 2015 of majority of the independent directors. And when I looked at the composition of the credit committee right from 2012, and I was shocked that Mr. K.V. Kamath, who was then the chair of the credit committee and the chair of the bank, was an independent director. Now, I don't think any one of you would have ever thought that K.V. Kamath, who ran the bank as a CEO first for several years and thereafter the chair of the bank, could have an independent director.
No, you're right. Bank. So the data shows that Mr. Kamath was, so there were 4 people on the credit committee. There was Mr. Kamath, Chanda Kochhar, Mr. Ramachandran and Mr. Homi Khusro Khan. And that
so it was not majority.
May,
it was
half and half.
Up to May, yes, that's right. The first bit is that it was half and half and not majority. Up to May 1st, 2012, Mr. Kamath was a non-executive director and chairman of the board of ICICI Bank. Yes. May 1st, 2012 onwards, he became independent director. So FY13, FY14, one second, sir. I'll just put the information out there. FY13, FY14 and FY15, Mr. Kamath was the chairperson of ICICI Bank. He was an independent director at that point in time, and he was also the chairman of the credit committee. And now they are counting his independence as constituting a majority of independent directors. You are questioning his independence, rightly so. And if you question his independence, then it's not. He is not an independent director in the spirit of it all. Then you would say that the credit committee was half and half and not majority.
Yeah.
And one sec, Ira, one sec. I will give you that. In the same press release, they talked about that the committee was chaired by the then chairman of ICICI Bank, and it included independent and working directors. It does not even say then also that the chairperson was Mr. K.V. Kamath, who was considered independent for that purpose. It doesn't say that.
Well, he was appointed as an independent director. We don't. The debate is the right one that can he be an independent director?
I mean, without even stepping out of the board, even for a day, can you next morning come to the bank and say, I'm independent director from today?
Yeah,
I mean, this is bizarre.
But I think the larger point you're making is that when they say that their credit approval process are robust, are they robust?
I'm picking up only from that.
Yes.
The word, I'm testing it with the word robust.
And you're saying that if it's a committee split half and half...
How can it be robust, first of all?
I do want to point out that even HDFC Bank's credit committee currently is half and half split.
No, but then they don't say that majority of the directors are independent directors.
But
because
he
then
was,
if you say,
legally he was independent director.
No.
So in spirit, you
We
may
don't
not
know.
agree.
No,
he was legally. Till he was legally starting May 1st, 2012, Mr. Kamath was appointed as independent director by the board. You don't agree with the tag independent.
How
but
can
he
you
was
tell me by
director.
what process
so
of
the
law?
Four members,
By what process
Chanda
of
Kochhar
law
was MD,
somebody becomes
but
an independent
Mr. Kamath,
director?
Mr. Ramachandran and Mr. Khusro Khan were all three independent directors. So I'm saying their statement is how do I put it, is not a lie, but it would be erroneous to say so if one did not consider Mr. Kamath an independent
Have
director.
you ever, or can you quote me any incidents or any instance where a CEO of a bank then continues to be a chair of the bank, can continuously, when he's remaining on the board, he's not even stepped out even for a day, can become an independent director? Is it not a joke?
It's a great question.
It's not a joke?
Yeah.
Whatever process of law be, then you don't take this that we are best governed bank or best governed company. It can't be.
Yeah.
Now my second point, which is arising out of the same situation again on this, that what transpired between 28th of March 2018, when the same board felt that every process followed by the Kite Committee or the board was robust, that you have it in 29th of May, want to institute a complete independent person to be appointed of the stature of, now we know that who the person is, that Justice Sri Krishna to be appointed on that, and he will look into all the allegations which have been made out by the whistleblower on that. What transpired? Why did not board then act when there was so much of hue and cry? And
Well,
mind
they
you,
claim to have acted, actually.
1 minute.
They claim to have looked into all the processes and all the loan approvals,
but
the
when,
video calls.
but
So
when
they
this board satisfied itself
Yeah.
so well,
No, I agree with you.
satisfied so well that they issued a press release narrating the entire incident and saying that we have full faith. In fact, the last para say that we have full faith and confidence. What transpired? And mind you, by then, CBI had already started inquiring into this allegation.
But what is the point here, Mr. Singhvi? Because, I can even go beyond this and ask you the question that why you're confused or perplexed about the events of March, right? I'm saying I'm confused and perplexed about how a whistleblower complaint that was published in 2016 on his blog site has suddenly become news and has changed the fortunes of this bank in 2018. For 2 years, nobody did anything. Nobody who followed banks, no investors, no stakeholders, nobody in the investigative agencies, nobody in the government, nobody in the regulator, nobody said anything about this whistleblower note, and 2 years later suddenly we're all wringing our hands and saying, has the board done enough? I mean,
But I think there was
an investigation.
There was an investigation
at
done.
the Reserve Bank of India. I think that it has been reported now. We have reported it. Other agencies have reported it.
And there was an investigation done by the chairperson of the bank as well.
Yes, in 2016.
In 2016, and he satisfied himself that there was nothing wrong.
And the RBI,
so
from
why
what
has this
has
come
been
back
reported.
up? If there was an RBI investigation,
Which said, from the best, and this is my reporting, so I'll put my neck out and say this. That investigation said that there was no on paper evidence found of a quid pro quo in this loan approval,
Exactly.
but it was sent to investigative agencies in Delhi to look into the funding structures of companies which were promoted by Chanda Kochhar's husband, and Delhi investigative agencies had that note from the Reserve Bank of India.
so are we saying it's just a coincidence that they woke
No, we're
up
not.
in
No, we're
2018,
not.
these Delhi investigative agencies?
We
I don't know,
don't.
I'm curious. There are no answers to many of these events
But
that we're
Menika,
linking
let me come
together,
back to
right?
the Kite Committee, okay? Because they've spent so much of time in
That's much
defining
easier to deal
the
with because it's all on
committee and all
paper,
that.
yeah.
And I want to bore you for 2 minutes more on the subject. Then when you look back into 2012, it was chaired by KV Kamath. It continued to be chaired by KV Kamath till such time he resigned from the board of ICICI when he was appointed
June
to the
30th, 2015.
15.
Yeah.
And then it was headed by Chanda Kochhar.
Correct.
So the credit committee of the bank for all the relevant period was headed by an ICICI person. And I don't buy this independent thing at all.
Okay.
It was only in April 2017 that M.K. Sharma was appointed the chair of the credit committee on that. So for the board to have reposed so much of faith and so much of confidence and saying robust and all that, I think they should have done this homework beforehand and seen the processes of the credit committee. And now you're saying that now hell is breaking loose and I have completely independent, eminent jurists to look into all the aspects, because one whistleblower now tells us that there is something really wrong. Then what happened to Mr. Gupta when he said something was wrong?
What you're saying is not insignificant. What you're actually suggesting is wordplay by whoever has written these press releases. Because they say majority, well, we'll put that down to the fact that Mr. Kamath was an independent director. Then they say, things like it was always headed by an independent director. But, again, if you discount Mr. Kamath's independence in that sense, then that's not necessarily true. So they are using wordplay here to suggest that things went one particular way and therefore processes were robust, and you're challenging
and there were 2 years in the middle, as we found, when Chanda Kochhar was heading the credit committee as well, right?
Yes, FY16 and FY17 was Ms. Kochhar, Homi Khusro Khan and MS Ramachandran. There were three members on the
why
committee.
this flip-flop again for credit committee, and board did not even look into it? At first it was KV Kamath, then Chanda Kochhar. Then what happened in April 2017? They felt the need of having MK Sharma, who was already chair of the bank. He was chair of the bank for a considerable period of time. When after KV Kamath left, it was Mr. MK Sharma was appointed. So for 15 and 16, when Chanda Kochhar was appointed the chair of the credit committee, why was this not followed, that if the KV Kamath, then the chair of the bank, was also the chair of the credit committee?
No, so I think if you're making the point that prior to Ms. Kochhar's heading of the credit committee, the bank claims that the committee was headed by an independent director. Why was that not maintained when Ms. Kochhar became the chairman?
Correct.
Yeah, well, but you've raised questions with the independence of that independent director. So technically, if you look at it, the bank's credit committee from FY12 onwards has, like you said, been headed by an ICICI Bank insider. First it was Mr. Kamath, then it was Chanda Kochhar. It's only April last year that it became MK Sharma.
But Menka, I'll still give that, okay, KV Kamath, of course I don't consider him independent at all, and I don't think anyone can consider him as independent, but even given that he was not an executive of the bank at that point in time.
Correct, he was non-executive.
But then why did you have, and what was the reason for the bank when Mr. Kamath quit in 2015? That you did not appoint the chair, because if it was the chair which chaired the credit committee, should have been MK Sharma, even in 2015. Automatically, it should have been the precedence which you follow on that.
I have a small defense for Mr. Kamath here. Again, I want to play advocate here for those who are not present. Mr. Kamath, before he was appointed independent director, was non-executive director. So he went from being executive and hands-on management to being non-executive director.
No, getting into semantics, Menka.
You could accuse me of that. I'm not. Please hear my argument. I'm playing devil's advocate here. He went from being hands-on management to non-executive director to independent director. So some might argue that you went through a period of being non-executive. You were not involved in the day-to-day running of the bank. And therefore, when you became independent, you were actually independent and not unindependent. I'm not suggesting.
Are you buying this?
That still leaves 2 years in the middle.
On today's discussion is to ask you both questions. I'm in the delightful spot of not having to answer.
Are you buying all this?
Go ahead. No.
So take that argument forward. So we are now saying that the credit committee, according to our understanding, was not perhaps as robust as the board claims to be, right? Two reasons. One, was Kamath independent enough? Two, there were 2 years into the middle that Chanda Kochhar was actually heading the credit committee herself. These, incidentally, were periods when there was a lot of stressed asset resolution happening, but that's just aside, and maybe it has nothing to do with this. My question to you and both of you is that are we then saying that if there is, if there's fault in these loan approvals, loan restructurings, then the fault does not only lie with Chanda Kochhar and it lies with the credit committee and the members of the credit committee? Are we saying that? That's my next question.
Board all along.
Yes.
And the board all along.
Board all along. According to me, it's a board which has failed miserably in this case all along.
Why not the credit committee as well? Why not this credit committee headed by Mr. Kamath then?
Credit committee again is a committee of the board. So if the board fails, everything fails.
But Mr. Singhvi, FY12 onwards, and probably even dating back to that, I don't have the data, but FY12 onwards, the chairman of the bank and the chairman of the credit committee were the same.
Yeah.
Correct? And it was Mr. Kamath.
Sure.
So till FY15, till Mr. Kamath quit ICICI Bank and moved on, I'm
saying that only, precisely, that why
Mr.
not
Kamath
MK
was
Sharma?
the chairman of the bank, he was the chairman of the credit committee. Thereafter 2 years, Chanda was the chairman of the bank, was the MD and CEO and
chair of the
credit committee.
So my point is very simple, that when in June 2015, when Kamath moved on, and MK Sharma was already the chair of the bank, why did the bank think or the board think in appointing him? Because ultimately you replace a person with a person.
My point is, till 2015, the board was Mr. Kamath.
Of course.
And in 2012, okay, so again, going back to dates, they have said that it was in April 2012, they had an exposure of 3,250 crore to Videocom. They don't specify which month the restructuring or refinancing was done, but it was in 2012. At that point, the chair was Mr. Kamath and the credit committee was headed with Mr.
Absolutely.
Kamath.
And Mr. Kamath in the same year itself, on the 1st May 2012, from being a
Non-executive.
non-independent became independent. So that's also an interesting fact, which I don't think I've read anywhere in the media or I've read anywhere on this, that he became from non-independent to independent by just passage of time, if I may use that word.
No, it was there. It was raised. I do remember, but I don't think it got the debate.
But is it not the poorest, the poor corporate governance that you have the same person continuing all of a sudden because the passage of the time becomes independent?
Okay.
How can it be?
Mr. If the assertion here is that the board has not done right by stakeholders for several years, not just for the last 3 months that we're talking about, I think let's come back to present.
Now come back to the 18th of June.
Yeah, let's come back to today, which is that has the board now finally, sort of redeemed itself, or by in its press statement last night saying Ms. Kochhar has decided to go on leave, allowing for Ms. Kochhar to call the shots even now. As some people have alleged in their op-eds and papers today, is the board still playing rather deferential to Chanda Kochhar? And maybe, why not? Let me offer the counter-argument here. There has been no evidence provided so far as yet to suggest any actual quid pro quo took place. These are only just allegations. So why should the board not be deferential or not pay heed to the needs of their MD and CEO if there is no proof as yet?
There are three issues arising out of yesterday's board meeting which I have looked into. First of all, that the same board is doing so much of flip-flop is unbelievable.
Fair enough. You've made that point.
From March to May to June.
Yeah.
Now come to 18th of June. What happened? I mean, this board meeting was going on for very long hours. I think the media was waiting with a bated breath and all that. But I think Economic Times had already predicted in the morning. We all read the paper in the morning saying it's going to be Sandeep Bakshi. So that means there was completely a leak of this decision-making process. So if the board either leaked it or had enough reason to have already decided that Sandeep Bakshi will be the man here. Otherwise, how did a main media cover their head story on that? And we were all looked into that. This is what is going to be the case. The second thing is, if this board is so competent and so capable, couldn't they keep this whole thing so secret? And if they read it, if I was the person, if I read a news and which is a leak, I'll change the whole discourse on that. But you can't have.
But you can't change who you're appointing to.
I think that's an important issue, but it's not the core issue. The fact that information leaked.
I agree.
Ira, allow me this. Ultimately, we are concerned with a listed bank.
Yes.
The share price went up by 4%. Okay? Only on the news of Economic Times having this. Yesterday, when the confirmation came last night, today the share price in fact came down. That suggests what? 1 minute. Since it's a listed entity, we need to be mindful of the fact that regulations today for listed entities are so different than the Companies Act. In fact, SEBI has raised the bar there. What is the regulator today asking this bank, or should be asking this bank, that how did this leak come in? The second point which I have on the subject is that you have finally, as a board, played nothing but musical chair. What are you doing? You're asking Sandeep Bakshi to come from ICICI Prudential to the bank and asking Mr. Kannan to go to ICICI Prudential. By doing this, are you suggesting that you've really done everything what is needed to be done for the bank to really do this, what you said on 28th of March and what you said on 29th of May, by just having this? And third point which I have is, you've appointed him as COO, Chief Operating Officer. This post, according to my knowledge, never existed in ICICI Bank before.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so you have invented a new post. B, you say that COO, as a COO, he will report to Chanda Kochhar. If Chanda Kochhar did not have this issue at all, would you have appointed a COO for the bank? If Chanda Kochhar did not have any issue arising out of the fact,
to offer a counter argument, right?
I'm much older than you. I may forget all this. So, would you have appointed a COO per se? I'm not on Sandeep Bakshi. He may be a great guy, right guy, whatever it is. Okay. B, it says that he will report into CEO, which happens to be Chanda Kochhar on that. But till such time she is on leave,
He'll report
to the board. Board meaning?
The ICICI Bank board.
You can report to a person. You can't report to an entity. No.
Well, the MD and CEO reports to a board, right?
Yes, sir. Of course you can report to a board.
You report to the board because you are a CEO, you run on a day-to-day basis the affairs.
But that's what he will technically be doing while she's on leave, right?
I have no idea. Technically, word used by
If
you.
she's on leave, who's going to be playing MD and CEO?
No, he's not MD
All
and
the
CEO.
roles or functions of MD and CEO will have to naturally fall upon the CEO.
This is an interpretation, ma'am.
I'm so sorry, but can I add one thing here? Sorry, before you get into it, just one small technicality. He has not just been appointed CEO, he has also been appointed whole-time director. You are the expert in company law. You know that it's almost parity. If you
there
go
are
back
four
to
others.
Key managerial personnel.
But there are four others, ma'am. So he's
key
one among them.
managerial personnel in company law would bring to some degree of parity whole-time director, managing director, or general manager. These are the people who tend to lead a company.
I don't know. I heard,
correct?
but
he has been appointed whole-time director as well, sir.
I find
the others are not whole-time directors; they're just directors, executive directors in nature.
No, but the term.
Can I try and talk about these two issues?
Yes,
that you
please
raised?
do.
But the last one I take it first. The whole-time director is the term used in the Companies Act. There is no term called executive director in the Companies
No,
Act.
so they're just directors.
No, they are whole-time directors because by virtue of your being in employment, in full-time employment, if you're a director, you're a whole-time director. That is Companies Act.
Sure.
So yes.
Okay.
So according to me, all four of them are equals. As Supreme Court just said that all judges of Supreme Court are equals. One only had the right of the roster. Okay, and roster also has to be with the seniority and keeping the presidencies and the prestige of the court alive. I'm not onto that. My last point on the subject is that when Chanda is right now been asked to, or maybe she has applied for a long extended period of leave, and mind you, I don't know, I didn't read in the press release that Justice Sri Krishna has been appointed
They
as
have not announced it.
Yeah.
I was
okay.
They haven't announced it. They haven't announced the terms of reference.
No. I don't think the bank has yet said
No, they haven't.
They have not announced
who
it.
that independent and credible person
No,
is.
they've not made an announcement.
But it seems that
Justice Sri Krishna has confirmed to Bloomberg.
confirmed to Bloomberg that he is the person. So I find it very bizarre that the board and the bank doesn't say that they've appointed Justice Sri Krishna, but man himself says that I've been appointed by the bank.
Well, we reached out and he said, I think he said that I've received their request or something like that. I've agreed to do it, but I've not received the terms of engagement yet.
But point, Menaka, which I
get
is
it.
That this board and the bank both have miserably failed in communicating these small things.
Absolutely.
But even coming to the point that even if he is appointed, and I take your words for that, there is no period, according to me, which has been defined for him to complete this. So for a very long extended period, okay, which can happen because of investigations are dating back and all of that, you will have a situation of the bank being run by COO who's reporting into the board. My last point here is that the most important factor for this board, and yesterday's meeting was, of course, appointing Sandeep Bakshi, which was predicted by Economic Times, but to have appointed a chairman, because the current chairman's term is expiring on 30th of June, only 12 days are left. If you don't have a chairman and if you have a new COO and no chair, I think this is where the concern of the investors.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. So go on.
No,
I was just going to go backwards on three of these points. No
And
chairman
why?
appointed absolutely should have been done. Also, I would like to point out, not only have they not announced Justice Sri Krishna's appointment to this committee, they have not told us what the terms of the investigation are going
And
to
period.
be. And the period, most importantly.
Because you are saying that we are saying the COO shall report into
No,
Chanda
I don't mean the
Kochhar,
period.
But till such time Chanda is on leave, he'll report to the board. So we don't know what period it could
I
be.
mean period over which this investigation is going to take place, because they have to decide how far back the investigation can go, sir. These loans are loans which some of these loans have been first approved in 2007, 2008.
Correct.
So you have to see how far back this investigation can go to determine proprietary of those loans. You have not announced that. Backward on COO. So in those 2 points completely. On the point of why he was brought in on as a COO, and tell me what both of you think on that. Bakshi was not in ICICI Bank.
For 8 years.
Yeah. So he was not in ICICI Bank. So he could have not been given an interim position without having first been brought into the bank in some way. So he would have to come to the bank in some position and then been given charge of MD and CEO is what I understand. If he was still the head of ICICI Pru, he couldn't have been given charge of interim CEO of ICICI Bank.
Yeah.
Right? Am I correct on that?
I give you, Ira, but only one point which I beg to disagree with you. When you have Kannan, whom you have now made in charge of ICICI Approved Life, you already have him who had gone through this whole process in the bank, being in the bank for last several years. Would it not be appropriate because the banking industry, as you know better than I do, is going through so difficult time today that you need to have somebody who's on day-to-day basis running, being there
So you're saying
in the
Mr.
bank.
Kannan would have been a better fit for the COO role than
No, but what I'm saying,
no, is that the point you're making?
No. My point is very limited, and I'm elaborating on this whole situation for a simple reason that when you look at where the condition of the bank is, that you're not very sure whether it will be 2 months, 3 months, or 5 months by the time Justice Sri Krishna, if he happens to be the person on that, will come back with his investigation and all of this. Then suppose he comes back and similar situation, that everything was all right and there was nothing wrong. Chanda comes back as MD CEO because she continues to be MD CEO. What happens then? What is the role to be played by Sandeep Bakshi?
So one second, just a couple of things.
There was no need. There was no need altogether. Whereas if they had put Kannan in the interim situation,
I think we're reading this a little incorrectly. I think it is quite clear in the way that they have conducted this, creating the position of a COO, is that they were faced with two options. And we discussed this earlier today, right? The option was that, look, you asked Ms. Kochhar to step down and go from the bank for once and for all.
We don't know that.
One second. You have no reason as yet to believe so because the internal inquiry has not happened.
Correct.
You have no proof against her. But what are the options you're faced with today? You ask her to step down and go, and you give whoever the next successor is the role of MD and CEO, whether that successor is Mr. Kannan or Mr. Bakshi or whoever the board has selected.
Correct.
Or, since you have no proof, and it's very unfair that we keep talking about Chanda Kochhar in this fashion, but if she's exonerated, there is a person's career that has been destroyed by all of, not just us, but all of the conversations that have gone on over the last 3, 4, 5 years.
I'm completely with you, Menika.
Yeah, no, listen to me, just listen to me. So what could they do? Now she's going off on leave. So the only way they could do it was create this interim position, I would call it interim of my own, of a COO, whereby by the time she comes back, I assume that her term ends in March next year. I assume by the time she comes back, and it's not that many months, it would take at least 4 or 5 months to go do an inquiry which dates back 8, 10 years.
If it all is appointed.
Well, okay.
And when is appointed, I don't know.
8, 10 years. Okay, but whatever, the case being that it would take at least 6 months, which means that that's 3 months of her term. So I think it's quite clear, the writing's on the wall. She's unlikely to get an extension. What she has now is an opportunity to exonerate herself and leave honorably, as opposed to leave in this kind of situation, which, depending on whether she's innocent or guilty, is unfair.
Do you not find as bizarre and funny as I'm finding it, that if you read the 30th May, which is almost a month old press release, that bank will appoint an independent and credible person to inquire into this. Bank chose till yesterday not to appoint anyone. No. And
a lot of things about the way the board and its, spokespeople have dealt with things over the last 3 months have been perplexing.
Let me complete. We are all gossiping and saying that maybe it is Sri Krishna wrote it. Yeah. It is. Okay, it is a gossip, tells us, and bank confirms it. But bank chose to have a COO, define the role of COO, define the reporting lines and all of that without appointing that independent credible person. So the person doesn't come in, but you decided on this, that till such time that person comes in, the CEO will go on an indefinite...
I agree with you.
Valid complaint that they need to allow.
No, but you are asking the CEO, or CEO may have chosen on this issue
Mr.
that I will go on and leave till such time we complete this.
But the truth is, this is not a board that is in control of the situation. This is a situation that's in control of the board, because the board seems to be reacting as opposed to being leading this situation. Otherwise, the board should have, like you pointed out, announced the successor chairman. Which is so critical, because like you said, this is going to be a board-run company for a while. They should have announced who's setting up the independent inquiry.
The board is not yet implemented. Appointing an independent credible person.
I think you didn't hear me. I'm in agreement with you.
And you're changing the executive team without realizing that is the cause for which you need to do it. Suppose tomorrow they decide, okay, we don't want to appoint anyone on that. Then what happens? Chanda comes back, Sandeep Bakshi becomes a surplus.
Well, that's unlikely to be the case.
I don't know.
We don't know.
But that's our supposition.
That's our supposition.
My
last point is very quick one, is on why Bakshi, you said. Why not Kannan? There, sir, and both of you, do you not feel...
I'm not onto names. I never said...
You said, why did you bring Bakshi in?
No. What I'm
when
saying...
you had Kannan there.
Just bear with me for 30 seconds. What I'm saying is that if suppose you wanted, or suppose CEO wanted that an independent inquiry to be conducted, and I don't have to... I don't want to come to the work till such time that is done. That's fair enough. Okay. In that situation, you pick up one among the equals the whole-time directors and say that till such time the CEO comes, which happens in every company, till such time the CEO comes back, you will be the acting CEO, till such time inquiry is completed.
If they wanted to create only an interim position, they could have created. So I think this is the writing on the wall. This is not, this is not a CEO will come back and take back
Then
charge.
why are they saying that he's going to report to Chanda
But
Kochhar?
she's going on leave effective yesterday.
so far
who
she's
is he
still
going to
the
report?
CEO.
So this is...
No, but they think that when he's going on leave, he's reporting to the board.
This is a bank giving a easy phase-out process to its MD and CEO
Menika, then
and doing a really bad job of it. Look at this. They said Mr. Bakshi will report to Ms. Chanda Kochhar, who will continue in her role as MD and CEO. And therefore, and thereafter, then they've said that, she's going on leave. The board has noted and accepted this, and that he will report to the board.
Now, my
So
last
what is the point of her reporting him to him if the day he's appointed, Chanda is going on leave, he's obviously going to start reporting to the board.
Now flip it. If Chanda has been exonerated completely, she comes back. What is Mr. Bakshi going to do?
That's, that is up to the...
No, but because bank never had a COO position ever.
Yeah.
Secondly, you sent Kannan out to manage the Prue Life. Okay, and Mr. Bakshi comes here. Are you suggesting then he will replace then Mr. Kannan if Chanda comes back?
No, we don't know that. We don't know.
Of course. What will he do otherwise?
Stay CEO, leave the bank, go to another entity.
This board felt it so important that they must get X person for post of COO, and then Y position is getting vacant because of bringing the X here on that. In all that situation, they don't even think of it that they must appoint a chairman, which is the most important factor.
That I agree.
So they spend considerable time on speculating and having the whole media work on this.
That strengthens your argument. Sandeep Bakshi was given an extension earlier this year at ICICI Prue Life.
Not this year, ma'am. 18 days back on 1st of June 2018.
This year, right? Yeah. So he was given a 2-year extension.
18 days
a 2-year extension because
extension.
he's done an exemplary job of leading the company and taking it public, etc., etc. So the company thought, and I understand that he was hitting retirement. I've been trying to confirm this with the spokespeople at the companies, but I haven't been able to. But the company thought it prudent to give him a 2-year extension, despite the retirement age, because they said he was an exemplary leader.
Absolutely.
Now he's been spirited out to ICICI Bank.
For a 5-year term.
For a 5-year term, but like you pointed out. So 1 second.
The board members are common.
That's fine. That's not the point. The point is, you made the possible scenario out there saying if Ms. Kochhar is exonerated and she comes back and she gets an extension in terms of another term, then what happens to Sandeep Bakshi? So here is ICICI Prue that really likes this leader, decided to give him a 2-year extension.
Correct.
Within days has lost him to ICICI Bank.
Yeah.
And you're saying that there is now the potential scenario that, if Chanda comes back,
what happens?
One company has already given up its CEO.
Right.
And the CEO, or Mr. Bakshi, has not really been moved to CEO or MD position in ICICI Bank. Absolutely. It doesn't quite all add up. But anyways, this is all hypothesizing.
No, but that means, you mean to say the board has already decided that Chanda will not come back, and we must have then Sandeep Bakshi really running till such time we appoint a new CEO. Then they are jumping the gun because on 28th March, they say everything is all right. 30th May, they say we appoint somebody. And on 18th June, you say now we're dumping Chanda completely. We're getting Sandeep Bakshi to really run the bank.
So your point, and to summarize it into two short points.
No, but read it. Three press releases. 28th March, 30th May, and 18th June. It does not give the consistency of the board's thought process on the whole thing. So board is jumping from one situation to the other situation. And the last point which I have still, I'm laboring on that. Why has not board yet thought about having a chairman when they know it well? This bank, forget about other banks, this bank needs a chairperson or a chairman ASAP. Who's going to hold this?
Can argue with that.
Last words?
I think that is the last word, right? I think so. Summarizing our discussion briefly, there are 3 issues. One is, even if they have done the right or the necessary thing of taking Chanda out for a temporary period and doing an internal inquiry headed by an external person, they have not perhaps given enough answers to assure borrowers, depositors and investors that their credit approval processes are robust and that their board processes are robust. I think those are the 3 key takeaways from our discussion.
My one last point, Ira, is that also that for such large iconic institutions, be it Infosys, be it what we saw it in Tata's, be it in ICICI, and particularly the common thread I have is in Infosys and ICICI. Okay, and I may be very blunt here. I think to very large extent the blame lies with Mr. K.V. Kamath. both institutions.
Well, Mr. Kamat's not here to defend himself.
No,
So
that's
it's not
okay.
fair to...
I'm never known for being fair. So leave aside that debate. My point is very simple. You must have a chairperson who is very strong when you have such iconic places to be run. Because if these institutions were run earlier as a chairperson like Mr. Vagul or Mr. K.V. Kamath himself, Narayan Murthy and Infosys and all that, you must not replace it with weaker boards and weaker chairperson who can't handle the crisis.
I think staying away from people, it is, as you know, it's the board. Even when we talked about the credit committee, I think, you know, the question that has come to my mind is that if the issue is with the composition of the credit committee, then should one person be held accountable? Should the entire credit committee be held accountable?
I think it's a collective responsibility of the board. And in this case, when you look at last 3 months events, I think it's very clear on that board has not realized it. And again, let me put it one thing.
We're out of time.
RBI is saying that bank is a special entity.
No,
Bank is
and
not a
more
company.
than that, ICICI Bank is a systemically important entity. It's a systemically important bank. So it not only has the regular level of checks that a deposit-taking entity has, it has level of checks above that because it's a systemically important bank.
Okay. So to close on what Mr. Singhvi said, I think if a board fails to do right by all the various shareholders, the argument that it accentuates in this country is that, you know, for the longest time we've been fighting the promoter culture that this country has had, and therefore banks or institutions like ICICI or Infosys, which eventually then became professionally run, widely held companies, were the hope that we held out, that at some point they will succeed, that board-run companies will work as they've worked to some extent in the West. And unfortunately, none of this gives you enough courage or belief to think that it's time to junk the promoter system and move to a system like this, especially not till our boards mature and are able to deliver the governance that we need. We're going to end it here.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks very much, Mr. Singhvi, for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Ira, thank you. And thanks very much for watching.
Thank you.